Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we are going to talk about the number 6. And if there is a 6 within your date of birth or as your destiny number, then this video is going to apply to you because the number 6 reveals a lot about us. I will link a video that shows how to do the Vedic Grid in case you don't know, as well as the simplified version. This right here is a Vedic Grid. I will also link a simplified version. So let's first talk about what number 6 is. So number 6 in Vedic numerology is represented by the planet Venus, by Shukra. And so it has a lot to do with the energy of Taurus as well as Libra. So the themes that carry through in Taurus and Libra are going to be prominent if you have a 6 in your date of birth. So Taurus, that is the second house in the Kalpurush. That is going to represent our self-worth, our family, our values. It's going to be our wealth. Also the food that we like. The second house can speak a lot to the food that we eat. And if there's an afflicted second house, right, then you're usually eating a lot of processed food. It speaks to sensuality. And then Libra, the 7th house in the Kalpurush, is going to talk about relationships and diplomacy, right? Because it's represented by the scales. And so people with number 6 are going to have a huge desire to have relationships. And so there's going to be love and diplomacy involved. Venus is enjoyment in life. It's our hobbies. It's the activities that we like to do. It's hanging out with our family and friends and playing at the park with our kids and lounging around and watching football. It's the pleasures in life that bring us happiness and joy. It's also, again, our creative pursuits. And so that will involve enjoyment of the arts, painting, going to museums. It will also be playing musical instruments. So we will talk about number 6 a little bit more as we get into this, but I want you to see if you or someone you know has the number 6 in their date of birth, what that is doing in their life. And we can see, people that have this more pure love, think of the Venus and Pisces kind of love, just seeing the good in people, or if they are leaning on the side of being too materialistic. So let's take a date of birth and I'm going to show you how this works. Let's do January 6th, 1975. And so there's many different ways that the number 6 is going to play out in someone's life. So if they just have one 6, that is going to be very different than if they have multiple 6s. If they have a destiny number of 6, that's going to be very different than just having 6 in your birth date. So let's see how this works. I'm showing you the Vedic Grid. Again, I will link the simplified version where it's just a line of numbers you write out, but it is just as effective. So January is the number 1. We're going to put that here. The numbers in your date of birth always follow this grid. Then the 6th of the month is going to, the person's born on the 6th, so that 6 will go here, and then 1975. So we never put in the first 2 numbers of the century, only the last 2, so the 7 will go here, we see that, and then the 5 is here. And then we have to add up all of the numbers in their date of birth to get their destiny number. That's the final piece before we can look at what the 6 is doing in their life. Their destiny number is a 2. I do want to mention really quickly that within Vedic numerology, we do not use master numbers, just as a side note. So this is this person's grid. We can see that that this person has 1 6. And so having 1 6 within Vedic numerology is known as positive 6. It is best to have 1 6 versus multiple 6s or no 6. And then multiple 6s is known as negative 6. And so this person's Venus, the things that Venus represents within this person's life, is operating at a very high vibration. They are going to have comfort and luxuries within their life because that's what number 6 represents. Relationships and love is going to be very important to them. Social graces are going to be at the top of this person's life and the way that they interact within life, right? Because not only is it their date of birth, right? People that are born on the 6th of the month they're very magnetic. They have a lot of social graces, but this person only has 1/6 and we can see it's positive. So it's operating at the high vibration. Now, what is really interesting about the number 6 that I think people often forget is that having 1/6, the positive 6 within your date of birth, can make someone a very good teacher of arts and sciences. And the reason this is because Shukra was the guru to the asuras. That's the demons. He was the guru to the demons. And so people that have a number 6, especially if it's a destiny number 6, make excellent teachers. The other thing is that having 1/6 in your grid can make you a great healer. So, Reiki, shamanic healing. People with number 6 are very concerned about fashion and beauty and design, but they're channeling it in a really appropriate way, right? Because it's 1/6. So I am going to move on to another date of birth, but before I do that, I just want to point out a couple of things within this person's life. They have a 6, 7, and a 5, and all of these are positive. They have 1/6, 1/7, and 1/5. So this person is going to, really appreciate the material qualities of life and the enjoyment of fine things, but it's going to be in alignment. They're not going to be over the top. This person also has 1/1, which is positive, and 1/7, also positive. And so good luck is going to come into their life. And then they have a 6 and a 2. And so 1/6 and 1/2 is very positive. It can speak to a lot of, this person's probably physically attractive, but also they have a good family life. If they didn't have a good family life growing up, we would have to do their predictions, which is beyond the scope of this video. But just looking at this 6 and the 2, if they didn't have a good childhood, then their married life and their own family life is going to be good. And so this is what a positive 6 will do. It will bring in the luxuries and comforts and creativity in life without being off the chart. Okay, so let's take this date of birth. This is August 17th, 2006. We'll get their numbers into the grid. So August is the 8th month of the year. So the 8 will go here, right? We're always following the pattern where the numbers goes. It never changes for the Vedic grid. The 17th, the 1 will go here, the 7 will go here. If it's a double digit for the date of birth, we always add that number to get into the grid or your lineup. Again, I'll link the video on the lineup if you don't want to memorize where the numbers go in the Vedic grid. So we have another 8 because the 17th, the 1 plus 7 equals 8. Remember, we don't take the first 2 numbers of the year. The reason we don't do that is because it's not going to be specific to that individual person, because it's a whole century of people, right? The 0 and the 6, the 0 doesn't go into the grid, and then we have 1/6. And so this grid is looking, it's pretty good. They have a positive 1, right? 1/1 is positive. They have 1/7, that's positive. 8s are represented by Saturn. This can speak to having to work hard in life and difficulties, but because they have 2 8s, 2 8s are positive, then they're able to channel the hard work into positive outcomes and be very wealthy. People that have 2 8s are usually incredibly wealthy. And then we're going to add up all of the numbers in their date of birth to get their destiny number, and their destiny number is a 6, which is ruled by Venus. When somebody has multiple 6s within their date of birth, there is going to be an intensity within the things that Venus represents in their life. And so the qualities of Venus are going to be intensified. And so, relationships are going to be intensified. The luxuries in life, creative pursuits, the enjoyment in life, spending time with family is going to really be intensified, because remember that Venus is going to represent the things of Libra and then the things of Taurus. So all of these things are going to be intensified. Hobbies, luxuries, joy, taking vacations, just the enjoyment of life in general. And so this doesn't have to be a bad thing as long as it's kept in balance. And so if you have multiple sixes in your grid, just make sure that you keep all of these things in balance to live the most harmonious life possible. So this person has 2 sixes, which is known as, again, -6. Now, I do want to note that I have said before, the destiny number always helps us in life, right? Because it's who we ultimately are. Our birth number is who we think we are. Our destiny number is who we inherently are and what we need to work towards in this life. And the number does help us, especially during the Mahadasha, the time period of that planet we're running. But when there are multiple sixes and one of them is the destiny number, the person in their life is still going to experience the negative effects of having 2 sixes. And they really need to, they're able to transcend that more than if you have multiple sixes and one of them is not the destiny number. But still, this person is going to have to work hard. And so what's going to happen when you have multiple sixes? Remember, we talked about if you have 1 6, even if it's just your destiny number, 1 6, whether it's through, your numbers or your destiny number, 1 6 is positive. It's going to bring in, self-worth, a positive family life. You're going to be an excellent teacher. You're going to appreciate fashion, design, beauty. You'll experience luxuries and comforts. Again, think of it as that Venus and Pisces energy. But when you have 2 sixes, it's bringing in too much of the Venusian energy. And so having multiple sixes is just intensifying the energy of Venus. So it can create multiple marriages, multiple relationships. And I don't mean long-term relationships and then, you end things. I mean relationship after relationship where you're not taking the time to sit back and be introspective. It can create materialism to an extreme. The more sixes there are, the more someone is going to have materialistic proclivities. This can be anything from just buying too much and kind of having this hoarding mentality, needing things. It can be too focused on name brands, too focused on appearances. People that have multiple sixes, now again, having it as a destiny number is not going to be quite as intense as having it as just 2 sixes coming from, perhaps your date of birth and then maybe from the year. But nonetheless, people with the destiny number of 6, when there's multiple sixes in the grid, can kind of pull themselves out a little bit more. But there's going to be issues within relationships, issues within the family, because think of what Taurus and Libra represent. So on the Taurus side, that's going to be food and family. So there can be a craving for too much food. There can be a craving for too much of, the pleasures within life, and that runs the gamut from many things, you know what I mean. There can be problems with that, and that in turn is going to go down. It's going to trickle down from the second house in the Kalpurush down to Libra, and that's going to therefore create problems within relationships. There can be too much focus on money, right? Just the desire to consume. Too much focus on beauty. Your creativity can be very high, but sometimes it's not being channeled in an appropriate way. So people with multiple number sixes need to really cultivate their self-worth. They can really oscillate between having high self-esteem and low self-esteem, right? Because Venus has a lot to do with our self-worth and our savings, our financial savings, because think of the second house in Taurus. And so when you have 2 number sixes, you really need to stabilize your self-worth and don't equate your worth with your savings or the money in your life. Just make sure that your self-worth comes from within and just because you are alive. Don't let your worth be attached to your savings. You're going to have to work really hard to stabilize this. And this is why people with multiple sixes often really value, the things of luxury and beauty and what they're getting from other people in terms of validation, or sometimes people with multiple sixes will want to be with someone that's very attractive or very wealthy, and that's because the worth is coming from these things that are outside of themselves. And so when you have multiple sixes, again, just make sure that your worth is coming from within, and separate your worth from your savings or what you're getting to look better or to feel better, because that's not where worth comes from. It comes from within, and just because you are alive in this material world. It doesn't come from other places or from the cash that you're actually, able to save and have in your bank account. So the remedy for having multiple sixes, even if it's your destiny number, is to reflect. Now, what's really interesting is on the flip side, people that have a grid or a numerical lineup of their date of birth that have 2 6s can sometimes not care about beauty. Most of the time, I would say like 90% of the time, people are too materialistic and too focused on the pleasures in life. But sometimes people that have multiple sixes have a challenge appreciating the beauty. And so these can be the people that, I realize that makeup and clothing isn't the most important thing in life, right? But they can be confused as to, if you're showing up for a certain event, just out of respect for the event or social protocols, right? Within this day and age, you have to dress appropriately. They don't care. They can criticize other people when they buy things, like, why would you buy that? Why would you spend money on that? You're focusing too much on this. And so multiple sixes can do this. And the way that you can tell, so there's 2 things you can do. The first of which is reflect, be self-reflective. You're going to know, like, am I spending too much on all of these material brands, or am I on the other side and not caring at all, to the point where it's where other people are able to mirror back to me that I am not caring, right? That's why turning to other people can sometimes be helpful in knowing who we are, right? That's why it's the 7th house. It's a reflection back to us. And so you'll know just by being self-reflective. If you're being too materialistic because of multiple sixes, then don't get down on yourself, especially if you have multiple sixes within your grid. Don't, this is why I love numerology, because while we can see everything through astrology, and numerology is never a standalone, right? Vedic numerology is never a standalone from Vedic astrology. You have to, see what is in the numerological, Vedic grid, and then get the fine details through astrology. But be self-reflective enough to know, like, hey, I have multiple sixes, 2 6s, 3 6s. I mean, I've done many grids where there's 4 6s, and just say it kind of hits you more when you see the numbers, right? We can look to the astrology charts, like I said, and understand what things are doing. But when you see the numbers, that kind of, it hits a little bit more. So don't be down on yourself if you have multiple sixes. Just say, wow, okay, I could potentially have some materialistic tendencies, and that's okay because I'm aware of that. And so you can, take measures to, maybe give back to the community a little more, or the world a little bit more, or start teaching, right? Because people that have multiple sixes can also be good teachers if they channel it correctly. Maybe fine tune the way that you're living your life a little bit, right? Because if you're watching this video, you obviously are, already operating at a higher vibration to want to know about numerology and astrology and to better yourself, right? I feel like people that choose to watch videos regarding spirituality and the occult, however that may be, right? Because the occult is only hidden knowledge. My formative years were in the 80s, and so hearing the occult always had this negative connotation to it, but all that the occult is hidden knowledge, right? Like things of the 8th house. And so numerology and astrology do classify as the occult. even though, right, it's not really hidden knowledge. I mean, it's been around for thousands of years. But I guess my point is if you're here watching these videos, there is something higher to you operating anyway, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be here. So if you see multiple sixes, don't worry. You just realize, okay, there's some materialistic, tendencies. I can work on that and channel that energy into the greater good. Okay, so here's the last date of birth that we'll just use an example. I'm sorry the grid is smaller. I realized that I just ran out of the larger grid paper and I didn't want to stop the video to go print another one. But let's just take this date of birth. So we've got March 24th. So the March is the third month of the year. And so that will go here. Remember, we're always following the pattern. Then the 24th. And so that will go, the 2 will go here, the 4 will go here. And this is a double digit for the date of birth. That's 2 plus 4. We have to put the 6 in. So they have 1 6. And so this is a yoga, the 3-6-2. So the 3 is Jupiter, the 6 is Venus, 2 is the moon. That is a very positive yoga. It leads to, a positive family life, a very upbeat personality. It's a creative person. This is a great yoga to have. Let's see, what else is happening with the 6s. So 1996, we don't put in the first 2 numbers of the year the person's born, but we do put in the 9 and the 6. So the 9 goes up here. There's another 6 here. And when we add all of the numbers up, the destiny number is a 7. And so we're getting this. And this person has several yogas. This one, just really quickly, the 3-7-4 is going to be huge career success for this person. And so let's just look at what's happening with the 6s. So they're having 2 6s. And one of the 6s is not a destiny number, right? Because their destiny number is 7, ruled by K2, or the south node of the moon. And so these 2 6s are going to be operating a little bit differently than the last date of birth that we did, where one of them was a destiny 6. One thing that you always have to remember is, and I think I will make a video on this, is that not all numbers are created equal when they are within the grid, right? Someone's destiny number, say if they have a destiny number of 5, that number is going to be much more powerful than someone that's born in, say, 1995, right? That 5 from 95 is going to go in the grid, but it's not going to, that 5 isn't going to be as powerful as a destiny number of 5. And so we have to remember this in the grid. And then also, it's again beyond the scope of this video, but having, multiple 6s, because when I talk about having 6s, 1 6 or multiple 6s, it is, having conjunctions to the other planets, or having, squares to other planets, is going to fundamentally change what the 6s are doing. It can either make them, more positive or more negative. For instance, having, 2 6s and then perhaps multiple 2s or multiple 3s is going to create these 2 6s. It's going to make the 2 6s operate at a much more difficult level, right? Having 1 6 is positive, and then when you bring in a bunch of 3s, that's going to change that positive 6. It's going to change the flavor. And so I will do another video at some point soon, but you do have a destiny number of 7 of K2. Having a destiny number of 7 of K2, I do see it as positive. Sometimes these people can be a little bit checked out of relationships, but a birth number of 7 can create a lot of challenges. A destiny number of 7, I find, is very helpful in a person's life. And so while this person does have 6s, and it's going to be a little bit harder to pull themselves out of some of the materialistic things if they, say, didn't have a destiny number of 7, let's say they had a destiny number of 1. It would be much harder for them to pull themselves out of these materialistic pursuits. But K2 is naturally going to, especially, after 30 to 35 years of age, it's always prevalent in your life. But that is when it becomes more prominent, more so than the birth number. It's, that's when you basically become your destiny number and who you are, right? And so when this person born on this date of birth, they had 2 6s. So when they were, younger, up until about 30 or 35, their self-worth, because number 6, Venus, represents self-worth. People that have multiple 6s, their self-worth can go up and down, right? It's not a stable 6. They would have had some materialistic qualities to them, but then as they aged and matured and K2 their number 7 destiny kicked in, it would have helped them quite a bit in grounding that materialism. So instead of taking just really lavish vacations for no point, their 6s are attached to 7, which is K2. There would have been a spiritual pursuit to them, like these planned spiritual pursuits, right? Like maybe they would go to, say, Bali because they really wanted to be immersed in the cultural and religious activities. They would have been very much in tune with this, but they would have stayed in the nicest retreat or the nicest resort within Bali. Then let's pretend that this person was born in, say, let's do 1998. Let's just tweak this a little. Let's say they were born in 1998. Basically, all the numbers are going to stay the same. This 7 destiny would go away, and then they would have a destiny number of 9. So we will put this 9 in the grid. And so, just moving up a couple of years is going to very much change the flavor of what is happening in a person's life. And so having 2 9s right here can make someone, right, people that have 9s, they're humanitarians, they're fighters for what is right. They have to watch their words. But what's happening here, having 9s, irrespective of how many 9s you have, and then having a 4, this can create some instability in various ways within life because they don't have a 5, right? Normally a 5 would be there, which is Mercury. And Mercury, it's the rationality. And so they are going to essentially take action. Rahu is number 4. So this expansion of taking action and not being able to be introspective because there's no Mercury. And then we have to compare that to what's going on with the Venus. So they have two number 6s and one of them is not a destiny number. So it's going to be harder for them to pull themselves away from this materialism. And they're not going to be very, introspective about it because they're missing a number 5. Now, having 2 number 9s can create, just this fighting spirit within someone. This person is going to have humanitarian qualities because they are a destiny number 9. But again, they're not going to go too far off track from, really enjoying the luxuries within life. And because they have 2 6s, it is going to affect the things in their chart that Jupiter represents, right? Jupiter is number 3 as well as number 2, the moon. But you can see that the date of birth significantly changes how number 6 Venus will act in your life. And so again, if you are someone, that has multiple 6s, don't take it as a bad thing, right? That's why we're here. None of us are perfect. Every single one of us has challenges within our grid. And that is why we've taken birth again, right? Because we're here to work on things and fulfill karmas. And so if you have multiple 6s, just, you can start this today. Just go towards the higher qualities of what a positive 6 would be. And so that's, really focusing on love that is pure and not, liking people for their money or what they can bring you or how they look. Focus on relationships and the balance of relationships. Focus on diplomacy. Focus on wealth, but in a balanced way. See money as something more spiritual, right? Because we have to sustain ourselves, going back to the 2nd house, going back to what the 2nd house is. We have to sustain ourselves in this life, but just do something balanced. So try to do something where you're giving back to people. Enjoy the comforts of life, but don't go to the extreme. And while you're enjoying comforts, maybe give to people who are less fortunate than you. Stay strong within yourself. Self-worth and your creativity. Don't let those fluctuate. Also look at number 6 as saying other people aren't better than you. either, right? That can be a problem with having multiple sixes. Oh, I forgot to mention also on kind of the negative vibrations of having multiple sixes, things of Taurus, cooking and eating good foods. Having multiple sixes can make you eat too much processed food and not be a good cook or take the time to learn. And so that's another thing that multiple sixes can do. But really, you have to just kind of look more closely at the grid and then go into the birth charts to see how these things are functioning. So I think that that's all I'll discuss tonight on the number 6 Venus. Please let me know if you have any questions. And if the video was good for you, please like and subscribe so you don't miss one of my other upcoming videos, because I am going to next be discussing the number 7, which is ruled by K2, the south node of the moon, and how that operates in someone's life. And if you're interested in booking a consultation with me, you can click the link in my bio or reach me at brooknumerology.com. Thank you so much for watching, friends. I will see you soon. Bye.